Good morning and I guess afternoon to wherever people are joining. Thank you so much for joining James and I for our presentation, all focused on how to build trust at scale as a sales vehicle, but also as a way for you to really grow your business, whether you're in a direct facing, like customer facing role or otherwise in the business. A lot of our customers are entrepreneurs or executives in companies that maybe aren't in sales roles, but as we know, everybody is in sales. James, you want to pull up the slides and we'll get started, but you can start with a little bit of an introduction and we'll dive in from there.
Yeah, I'm super excited to go through this content today. As we'll talk about in a second, both Em and I have extensive experience in the world of B2B selling, and it can be a long sales cycle. There's a lot of trust involved in that. And what we both found is that leveraging digital content and digital strategy is a great way to shorten your sales cycle, close more deals, and make the selling process a lot more enjoyable. So that's what we're going to go through today, is just talking through a bit of our framework and what. So as we get started here, the goal here is to stop chasing leads and start attracting them. A lot of us in the world of sales are being told to go out and get leads. So we do not want to cold call people. We do not want to send spammy DMs, and we don't want to attend, networking events that aren't very fruitful. And at the end of the day, what we don't want to do is chase leads. It's not good for us, and it's not good for our customers either, or prospects, I should say. So with a good digital strategy, the goal is that we will attract people. People will see the content that we're creating. They're going to find value from us, and they will be excited to work with us because they trust we can help them make that change they're trying to make. So that is the ultimate goal here. So quick about me. My name is James Roloff. I am the co-founder and partner here at Roloff Consulting. I've been doing internet website stuff since 2002, 2003, I think. So I've been doing this for a very long time. And more recently, for about 8 or 9 years, I ran the sales and marketing side of our website design company. So I did custom professional websites for people. We sold that business at the end of 2021. And since then, I've been at Roloff Consulting, where we focus on helping business leaders implement a good digital strategy. So that's what we're doing now. So that is me. I'll let Emma give her introduction.
Hi, everybody. I guess see you in the comments, hopefully. I see a couple of people joining us and putting in where they're joining from, and I would love to see more introductions coming in. As James said, my name is Emma. I am the other half of the co-founding Roloffs that started Roloff Consulting. And as James said, a lot of the presentation today on my part is going to be sharing a little bit of my own personal story of how discovering how to build trust at scale changed the game for me on my sales side of things. So I have about 10 years of enterprise sales experience. And over the course of that time, generated over $16 million worth of revenue. And then as we start talking about the different tactics that you can use to build that trust and bring in opportunities, like James was saying, to generate your own sales leads, I have gotten pretty good at using social media as a way to get people to know me. And over the last year, between different social media platforms, I've had the opportunity to reach 32 million people. And so all with educational content, keep in mind, not like, day in the life of whatever. I'm not that interesting. So what we're going to start with is a little bit, again, of the background of my story and specifically how James acted before we started the consulting company as my own personal consultant. But the first thing that I want to touch on is anybody that's joining us, and I see names coming in and I recognize a number of you guys. I see folks that work on agent and broker side, people that are selling consulting services, professional services of all different shapes and kinds. As I'm looking at the group that's joining us in the comments, you all sell products and services that require expertise. And as James mentioned, we've seen shifts in buyer behavior that really show us how important building trust is and the critical nature of that trust component whenever there is an expertise component to the purchase. If you're selling B2C and it's a widget and there are, it's a commoditized product, maybe the expertise and the trust doesn't need to be quite as high in that sales cycle as it does need to be when we're looking at these complex B2B sales. And so kind of going back to the very beginning, and you guys are going to see little bits and pieces of this story pop through when James starts talking about our framework and what we consult our customers on today. But James convinced me to come into the world of sales through the idea of education. So I started as a social studies teacher, was planning to do middle school or high school social studies, and had made my way into corporate training and was looking for a new role. And I always joke that James, his father, and his uncle on Thanksgiving sat me down for like an intervention. It was like all of us at a table, the three of them kind of huddled on one side, telling me that my next role needed to be in sales. And as James mentioned, the idea of cold calling, the idea of positioning a product in a pushy way literally just made me feel icky. And my initial response was like, oh, no, I can't. Sales is not the thing for me. And it was a comment specifically that James made during that conversation that got me to apply to my one and only sales job that thankfully I got. The stars must have been in alignment for me. But he told me the best salespeople are teachers. And if you find the right product and the right company, you can teach people about how you solve their problems and sales will happen. And so I took that like knowledge, wisdom bomb from James and I went into my first sales role. But truthfully, I was young, I was inexperienced, I was learning about technology at the same time that I was selling it. And it was difficult for me to build trust, especially going in these B2B scenarios with executives at large companies in the enterprise realm, walking into the room and establishing trust as a younger woman in that environment. I often saw people looking to the older people in the room or looking to some of my like supervisors that might have been coming in, sales VPs and stuff like that, and having the conversation with them because somehow implicitly they had more trust in that person than they did in me. And so as my career progressed and I got more confident and comfortable, even when I was coming in and coordinating the meetings and I knew my stuff, I still started to kind of see that drift towards other people in the room. And I realized I needed to do something that allowed me to build my own authority and build my own trust. And for anybody that feels like cold calling or the kind of like the sales bro mentality, girl or guy, isn't right for you, our framework is designed to help support people of all different shapes and sizes stepping into a sales role and being really effective and coming at it from that point of authority and trust. And so when I started to create content, I started to see a really big shift in how people interacted with me during sales cycles, what those conversations looked like, and ultimately, honestly, seeing sales cycles start to shrink because I was able to establish this sense of trust and authority with people before I ever got into the room to have a conversation with them. And so when we start to look at how you use content and social media as a leverage tool to build trust and build authority, it ultimately comes down to consistency and showing up day and day again with education, or day in, day out. That's what I'm trying to say. You guys all saw James smirking. This is the problem with working with your spouse. And I started to see that consistency was ultimately what allowed me to build trust. There are small signals that are sent to your buyers that you're going to show up and continue to educate them. They trust that you're going to show up and do what you said you're going to do during the sales cycle. When you show up for a meeting the first time, if you've been creating content, and dare I say video content, people will feel like they know you before you get into the meeting. But the consistency is where that starts to come through. Because I would love to see in the comments, like quick tap, fast fingers before I start talking. If anybody's familiar with the rule of 7, it goes to marketing, it goes to messaging to your employees, you name it. But we need to hear a message somewhere between 5 to 7 times before it truly resonates with us. So when you're creating content to try and get in front of your ideal buyers, they need to see you and know your offering and know the value that you bring to a relationship 5 to 7 times before they're going to feel truly comfortable with that trust and that level of authenticity that you've been able to build. And so as we continue to kind of move forward, I see James is talking. I'll stop.
I was just going to jump in for a second and say this is why cold outreach doesn't work very well, right? When you send out a cold call or a cold email, people don't know who you are. So they don't have that trust, that recognition. It's not even just trust. It's literally recognition of someone that they might want to listen to. And obviously you can have your cold outreach sequences where it's like call, leave a voicemail, then leave an email, and then send a LinkedIn DM. And it does help. But like Emma's saying, creating content consistently is a better way of doing that. So sorry, I want to interrupt you there.
No, you're fine. And you're not building trust when you leave a voicemail. You're causing somebody to go in and look at a cold message. And we've all been on the receiving end of that. It doesn't feel good to be sold to. And when you take the educational approach, you're opening up the opportunity to solve problems for people, and people with those problems will come to you. James, would you mind clicking to the next slide for me? And I just talked a little bit about my own experience. People have probably heard that story. And I don't want this to be like, oh, Emma wants to talk about how she was good at sales. I want this to be focused on the fact that our framework and what we do delivers results for our customers far beyond what James and I have been able to accomplish on the sales side or within our own business. So I have a couple of anecdotes to share with you about clients that we're working with implementing this framework that James is about to go into in a minute and what they've seen on their end. So we were working with one of our clients to do a digital strategy audit recently. And we were doing this big survey of their customers and where their customers came from and kind of what that sales cycle looked like. And this is a direct quote from that conversation from like our AI note taker. And she said, I never thought about how showing up consistently every day online helps build everything else, because it seems to me that they know that I am going to show up for them every time. And it just feels like my customers really trust me. And when we were going through this analysis, this person already had a really powerful personal brand, was doing a lot online, and you could see the direct through line to all of the top customers that were bringing in 80% of the revenue for that business were coming from content that was generated online and referrals that came from that content. Can you click one more time for me? Another one of our customers shared this, again, a direct quote from their message to me, that they met this prospect face-to-face a year ago. They talked for like 15 minutes, didn't pitch them, didn't talk bad about any of their current vendors. They just had a discussion with the person as a person. Then got connected, consistently creating content, and then that prospect maybe on and off again interacted with that content since then with a couple of very brief direct messages. And then all of a sudden the magical DM came through that was not like this person going and asking this person to see a demo or buy their product from them. The prospect, who had been on their prospect list for far longer than that 1 year, came to them and said, I want to see your solution. Can you show it to me? We're ready to we're ready to buy. So that sales cycle, yes, is still long, but like the actual engagement on the sales side is going to be much shorter because there is significant trust there. They are ready to make a purchasing decision, which is why they've reached out. And all of those types of like icky activities that people don't like to do. Sorry to anybody that might be joining us that's like a cold calling aficionado. Most of us don't like doing that type of sales. And so the activity of creating educational content has replaced those pieces to fill the sales pipeline through educational content. I'm going to stop excitedly talking about how this stuff works and hand it off to James to share more of our specific framework. But before I do that, I see, again, plenty of activity in the comments. I want questions. I want feedback from you guys because we're certainly going to have time to be able to dive into some of that today. So throw questions or stream of consciousness ideas that you have into the comments, and we'll be sure to address them as we're going. So James, I will hand it off to you.
Yes, well, plenty of time for comments, so definitely drop them in there. Happy to answer anything, learn about your specific business, answer any questions and how that might work too. This is something I'm just incredibly passionate about because I love business. I love helping entrepreneurs. I like helping teams grow. And I think the issue with there's so many people who be excellent at sales and business development, but don't want to do it. And that is because they don't want to do sales, right? Like they don't want to be a salesperson. And when I think of like the typical sales funnel or sales strategy, it's this. It is top of the funnel is you're grinding. You're a grinder, you're a hunter, you're going out, you're building lists of people, you're cold calling, and you're cold DMing, you're cold emailing, you're going to industry events like that last person mentioned. But instead of trying just to meet people, you're out there pitching your products and trying to set meetings, right? So the next stage after you grind is that you harass. So once you have your list of people that you've been I'll say grinding up against. Once you have your list,
we do not advise that either, everybody.
Yeah. Once you have your list of people and you've been grinding it out, then you harass people, right? Because then now your stage is you're trying to get those prospects to take a meeting. And oftentimes that means breaking them down and having enough outreach to them to the point where they actually accept a meeting with you. And then, of course, the context of there is that you think you're doing clever messaging by having the right words in the right sentence that convinces them that they should take a meeting with you. But a lot of times it's not the case. Bottom of the funnels, you sell. You try and get them to buy your product or service. And if they hesitate, you put things like deadlines or discounts and that kind of stuff on the line to get them to be convinced to purchase from you now. This is kind of the typical sales pipeline. And this is why people don't like sales, okay? And the word I want to use here is like, this is why sales feels icky, right? And like, I don't use the word icky very often, but I've heard people describe it this way. And this is a problem where I think a lot of people don't want to do sales. And Emma already mentioned earlier that my father, and my uncle, who are all in the world of business and entrepreneurship, harassed her. We were kind of doing the middle of the funnel there at her at a Thanksgiving dinner and told her she needs to be in sales. But her, like many people, like many entrepreneurs and like many people in the business world, they don't want to be out there doing these sales activities because it doesn't feel right.
Well, and I will say too, you put me up in front, anybody that knows me, put me in front of thousands of people. I will happily perform without like any care in the world. You hand me a phone and tell me to call someone who's not expecting it and probably doesn't want to talk to me. I'm not joking when I say I start profusely sweating and I start to shake and I bumble and I like, you can hear that I'm nervous in my phone, and any sort of like ability to build trust or come across as like a solid professional out the window for me. And so I had to find something different to do.
Yes. So this is where our approach comes in, which is really just focused on digital strategy. Like I mentioned on the onset here, I've been doing online marketing, building websites, doing stuff for 20 something plus years now, I think at this point. And what I have found that works best is to become the favorite teacher, which is the basis of our entire philosophy. And that is because when you're in B2B sales, so much of it is based on trust. You know, if you are a business to consumer, oftentimes you're selling something that's a quicker sales cycle, or it's commoditized, or it's a widget, right? A specific thing where people don't need to trust you as much in that purchase process. But if you're trying to get a business to spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars on something, they need to trust you. And the best way to do that is to become the favorite teacher. Create educational content online that educates people about your industry, engages them, provides value. And again, what comes back to the kernel of all of this, like Emma used to be a teacher. My original degree, and actually in college, was teaching too. And that is because we all have those favorite teachers. We think back through our college career, or maybe in high school, you can pinpoint people who are like, that was an awesome teacher. They were super engaging. I enjoyed their class. You trust that teacher because they know what they're talking about. And that's what you're trying to do in your industry. So whatever industry you're in, whatever it is you're selling, you want to think about the fact that you are an expert. People are buying your expertise in the world of B2B and in that B2B sales cycle. And the best way to show them that you have that expertise is to create educational content consistently. If you just simply say, I'm an expert, trust me, and in your proposal document, you say you've been working for X amount of years, that's great, but they don't actually see that trust, right? They don't actually see that expertise to build that trust. So this is kind of the foundational thought process behind the way we work with clients in our philosophy. So what we have is we call our favorite teacher framework. So
hold on, full circle moment, everybody. Back to when James was my own personal consultant. I decided to share him with the rest of the world. I'll take the thank yous in the comments.
Yeah. So this is a framework I've been using since 2015. I initially started doing that back at our web design company. And this is the funnel that we use. And so top of funnel is educate. So the way you're going to reach prospects is by creating educational content online consistently. Blog posts, social posts, doing things like newsletters, creating video, showing the world your expertise, but not in like a boisterous way, but truly educating your audience. So knowing who your customers are and teaching them about the industry that you're in, but also the problems that they're facing, the different solutions to those problems, and helping to basically illuminate what's going on in their business and how you can help solve that. Middle of the funnel is, instead of trying to convince people to take a meeting with you, you are going to provide value. You're going to create lead magnets. You're going to be doing things where you're putting out information, whether it's educational webinar like this one, or creating some sort of guide, offering some sort of free consult call, which again, not a salesy consult call, but a true consultative call you can offer people. You're going to give them something of value in return for them becoming a lead for you. Bottom of the funnel is you're no longer selling at this stage. And this is something I talk about all the time with our clients, is that typically if you are doing a good job at this strategy, by the time someone gets to the bottom of your funnel, you're not really trying to convince them that you're the right person to work with. It's kind of just going through the process of aligning expectations of scope of work, budget, outcomes, and you are that trusted advisor at that stage. Because at this point, they've already been following you on social media, consuming your content. They've consumed some sort of lead magnet from you or got something of value in that middle of the funnel. And so at the very bottom of the funnel, it's more along the lines of just making sure they have the budget for you and that expectations are aligned. So at that stage, you are a trusted advisor and not a salesperson. So that is the goal of what we're doing here. And
hold on, James, before you keep going, I wanted to bring up this comment by Ian, and then I stopped because I realized it was going to pop up over your face.
Yep, you're good.
But it's this idea of thinking about your own buying behavior and using that in your strategy. So he talks about that he hates being sold to, but he loves to buy things. And so that educational content approach allows you to put yourself out there, build that trust and authority, and then people who want to buy from you, who also align with you and your personality and will be the right kind of customer for you, will naturally come towards you. And I did see we've got a couple of questions too. So when we get further in, I'll start kind of sandwiching those in as well.
Yeah, I also got a note too. That's a really good point. And I think when you think about when you make purchasing decisions now, and as they're influenced by digital content, going back to that favorite teacher thought process, we all know those like go-to experts. We probably follow people on YouTube or follow people on LinkedIn where we know when we want to buy that type of service or buy that type of product, they are the first person we're going to reach out to because they are that favorite teacher. They are that go-to expert. So that is the goal of being that favorite teacher, is that when people think of your industry or think of your service, they reach out to you because you are that first person they want to go to. And then what that leads to is expanded reach. So instead of one-to-one prospecting, you're now reaching thousands of people at a time. You are becoming an industry thought leader, which means you have authority. People want to work out with you or work with you, and that'll lead to increased sales. So again, more leads, shorter sales cycles, higher conversions. That is the goal.
And they might want to work out with you too. You're fit and
yeah,
workout regimen.
Well, I wanted to pull it up too, because it was funny, but I don't know when else would pull it up. But Dan's biggest takeaway. This is about 7 minutes ago, so maybe he's got a bigger takeaway now. But this is it's the best way to not grind up against people, because that's not the.
I think that's solid advice, and everybody should take it.
Yes. So typical sales is one-to-one. It is you talking to a prospect, you reaching out to someone, trying to sell them on the value of your product or service and hoping they say yes. Why this works is because of scalability. And this is where the digital aspect comes in. You notice that our framework is called the favorite teacher framework. It's not called like the digital leverage something framework, because we leverage digital stuff. We leverage technology here, but it's still just sales and it's still a personal relationship thing. But where the value comes in from what we're doing is that when you create content, you can reach tons and tons of people. And I'm going to toot Emma's horn, she said at the beginning, but in the last year between TikTok and LinkedIn, she's gotten over 32 million views on her content. So what that means is that instead of having to talk to 32 million people about what we do, she can create content. Obviously, it takes a lot of time. It's an effort to create content, but as you do it, it becomes this flywheel, it becomes easier and easier, and you start reaching more and more people. So that is the goal here.
And one thing I would add is you don't have to reach 32 million people. Large buckets of those 32 million are not necessarily our ideal client, are not people that would ever buy something from us. But one, I hope I've helped teach them something along the way. And two, from a business perspective, even if the smallest fraction of that audience is compelled to come work with us, then the strategy has paid off. So again, if you're not getting those types of numbers, it doesn't matter if they're the right 5 people that are seeing your content.
Yeah, depending on what you sell, if you're selling a higher ticket item, you could reach 1,000 people in a month, and that would be super impactful if it's a good quality. And we talk about this often in our community with some people too. It's like, it can be a bummer when you're spending time creating content and not a lot of people see it. But it's like, if one prospect sees it and finds it valuable, that's all it takes, right? So that's a really important point to make too, is like, I'm not just trying to like pump up numbers here, but it's just fun. Numbers are fun. So when it comes to content strategy, what should you be doing? Go to the basics. You don't need to dive deep to show off your expertise. And, again, taking the analogy of a teacher, when you go to college and you're going for your undergrad, you're taking 101 level courses and you're slowly working your way up. Your professors probably wrote their dissertation or made their PhD in something that's much, much more advanced than what they're teaching you. But for you as a student, what's super helpful is 101 level stuff. So I highly recommend you think about your industry, think about your products and your services, but more so on the problems that your customers are facing and that desired outcome they're looking to get. And just in a Word document, create like a 101 level course outline. If you were going to teach a 101 level course, what would you have in there? So answering common questions that your prospects are asking you, explaining industry terms and the way things work, processes, systems, as well as providing how-tos and tutorials. So it's one thing to talk about problems and talk about teaching like the ideas behind things. Another really good bucket of content is actionable advice. What things can you do for people that'll help them get started on their journey to solving their problem? As well as highlighting stories of success, not necessarily, just testimonials, but literally talking about what success looks like and what it is to get there. And what that will do, again, is position you as that go-to expert.
So James, I want to tap on a comment from Lauren and kind of like, can you go back one slide real quick?
Yes.
So Lauren, you asked about like, what's the best way to gain trust and educate people in an industry that, has established roots, seems stuck, maybe unsure or a little nervous about change. Doing just this, focusing on foundational ideas that are going to help make the unknown less spooky is going to help. Having you become that go-to resource when they are ready to take the jump is going to help you kind of like from that expert standpoint, work with the customers that are ready to adapt and are ready to change because you're creating content that speaks to them. And I would say, and we can talk more towards the end, I don't want to completely throw off James right now, but the other thing too is play around with different types of content and what feels like real and authentic to you. But especially if you're frustrated with seeing people not adopt stuff, share that passion and that excitement for it, and you might spur people to think about things differently. But again, becoming that go-to expert, and especially starting with that 101 level, is going to help you create that bridge between the people that are a little nervous to take the leap and what you are selling and what the future looks like. That content can be that really nice like bridge to help them feel comfortable with moving forward.
Yes, the most boring industries, the most old school industries can absolutely benefit from having a teacher helping people understand about the industry, the products and the services. The basis of this is that, this is something I wrote about a while back. We have moved to what I call like the in search of generation. We're like, instead of waiting for salespeople to tell us about problems and be the kind of come to us and like teach us about things, we go online. We search for answers nowadays. So people are out there searching for things that are related to your products and services. And I say that they're not just searching for products and services. Typically, they're searching about the problems they're experiencing first. And if you can be the person that creates content that answers and talks about those problems, you are going to lift yourself up as an expert very quickly. So when it comes to actual consistency, like Emma talked about earlier, here's an example of a recommendation that I have as far as like the way to think about it. So on a daily basis, going on social networking sites that your audience is on, creating posts, commenting thoughtfully, engaging, and adding new connections. That's a daily activity. On a weekly basis, doing some sort of slightly longer form. So maybe a blog post, maybe a newsletter, maybe something like a LinkedIn article, or obviously other platforms like X has articles too. So kind of that longer form once a week. And then on a monthly basis, doing something more as like a lead magnet or something where it's an actual live valuable thing you can offer people. So like in-person events, creating webinars or doing webinars, doing LinkedIn Lives. Here we are right now. So some way that you can actually offer that next step of engaging with someone beyond that more static reading side of things. So this is how I view consistency.
Can I interject real quick? I raised my hand and you ignored me, so now I'm getting
I can't see the windows.
Well, I think it's really important to go back to this idea that you talked about posting and then commenting, and you said commenting thoughtfully. But one thing that we've been talking a lot about in our community, and also been seeing more like other LinkedIn gurus talking about the algorithm and what's happening. One of the big things that's happening on LinkedIn right now from a visibility standpoint is they are highly prioritizing comments that spur conversation. Thoughtful engagement with longer comments that show that you're not just good job, great post, thanks for posting. Like actually adding to the conversation gets you more visibility, and those comments are content. Even if you're not at the point where you feel 100% confident creating a video, doing a webinar, writing a blog post, get started with thoughtful comments now, because those are content that gives people an idea of your experience and your thought process on things, and gives them the opportunity to have a conversation with you, even if it's not on your post. And then the more feedback and the more you get going in that comment cycle, the more likely you are to have an idea to spur your own post and start creating your own content. But like, do not, I should shake the camera a little bit, I'm afraid I'll knock it off. Like, don't sleep on the comments, even if you're not fully comfortable with creating content yet.
Yeah, I also joined too. So I've seen the comments, people talking about the Challenger sale methodology. And yeah, this absolutely aligns with that, kind of thought process. That you are coming to people with insights, right? If you are out there putting out educational content about your industry, you are providing insights to people, changing their perspective on the way they see things, and helping to kind of guide them through the process, which again, the bottom of our funnel, our focus when coaching clients is that you have to be that trusted guide. People are coming to you as the expert. And so you are helping align the solutions. At kind of top of funnel, you're a trusted expert, but it's one to many. Bottom of funnel, people are coming to you to buy from you and having that one-to-one expertise. So I think that definitely aligns well with that methodology. Yeah. Going back to consistency though, and people probably heard this before, and if you've seen my webinars, you definitely have seen this before, but it's something called the 1% rule. And that is that 90% of people online are lurkers. They scroll down pages, scroll through news feeds, and they don't actually engage with content at all. That is 90% of people. And this is replicated across tons of different platforms, message boards, social media websites. This distribution model has been seen again and again. 90%. Around 10% will engage. So they comment regularly. As Emma was just saying, like thoughtful comments and engage with people. That is 10% of people. 1% actually create content. So if you had a room full of 100 people, or I don't know how many people are on this live stream right now. What's our count right now? I can't see it.
A little over 30 between the two platforms.
Okay, so in this given right now, if all 30 people were in this room right now, maybe one of you guys or two of you guys would consistently post online, and so that is how easy it is to elevate yourself to the top. Is that if you're able to create content on a weekly basis, you will be seen. You will show up on news feeds, and you will be the top 1%. So it's a very easy, attainable thing to do if you're able to stick with that consistency.
And circling back around to the idea as well of like commenting and getting your content out there, even contributing in the comments ekes you up high points above those lurkers. But then the other thing, when we were talking about the scale and the reach and the idea of whether you're getting in front of the right people, that lurker section of the people that are sitting and scrolling while they're eating their lunch or when they're in between meetings and don't have time to go do anything of like, substance, all of those people on LinkedIn are watching content and potentially learning something and potentially getting ideas about who they want to buy from, even if they're not clicking the like button or the comment section. There are lurkers that are your buyers that are watching, and you may never know that they're watching until you meet them at a conference and they tell you about the specific video that you taught them something with. And that happens to me all the time. And people that are in our community will talk about that regularly too, that people that have never engaged with anything that they've created are suddenly coming to them when they're ready to buy because that lurking behavior is strong. So don't get discouraged again. If you feel like there isn't traction, wait a little while. It'll come, and it'll be those lurkers that like sneak out of the depths and finally reach out to you.
Yes. So top of funnel, you're educating, you're creating that content. And like Emma just said, people will see you. And here's some example, right? So it's not just one type of content. Here's some examples of my stuff. I do video, I do LinkedIn posts, I do blog posts. We do in-person education too. This is where, again, this is a digital strategy that we're leveraging here for B2B sales, but all the good sales reps, this is, almost before my time. My dad used to run a company as well, and his background was in sales, and like he gave in-person seminars all the time. He was a teacher in person. So that is still a way to teach, but the beauty of digital stuff is you create that leverage and you can create that trust at scale. But that's still part of the process. But the next stage then, right? So we're creating this content. Now we need to turn that into dollars. You can see a little bubble there. So something needs to happen in the middle. And this is where the middle of the funnel comes in. This is where lead magnets come in. And if you're not from the world of marketing, you might not be familiar with the term lead magnet. But basically, it's a way to convert someone. And when I say convert, it means taking someone who is an unknown person, who's like an audience of yours, and converting them into a known person who has what's called buyer intent, right? So they register for a webinar. They download a guide, some way to basically show that you know their name, you know their email address, and you know what they're interested in. And the key with lead magnets, and here's some examples of some, right? The key with lead magnets is they have to be valuable. If you've ever gone online and downloaded like a white paper and it's like trash, or like, a guide and it's not helpful, that is going to hurt your ability to sell those people. But here's some examples of ones, right? So guides, checklists, webinars, newsletters, samples. If you're a free sample, a physical product, right? Case studies, quizzes, podcasts, if there's some sort of subscription component, templates. So think about your service and what you have to offer, and then think about what kind of lead magnets you can create. And this is a great, if you're struggling with this concept, I would say go to something like ChatGPT, tell it what industry you're in, tell it who your audience is, tell it the service that you're selling, and then ask it to come up with ideas of lead magnets. And I guarantee it'll help you along that process. My favorite approach to this is to look at two ideas. One is, how can I help someone understand they have a problem, right? So almost some sort of like diagnosis tool or something along those lines. The other one is to provide this first step in the process. So when you lay out what that process looks like to buy from you, so from like the very initial, hey, I have a problem, solution research, decision making, implementation of the actual service or product, and then the happy ending at the end of it. Think about what that first step is. You can kind of be that trusted guide that provides some sort of resource for them too. So that's what I recommend. A good example of that, which I talk about often, is at our web design company. We had a downloadable guide that was for how to plan for your new website, because our target was typically small business owners or marketing managers, and buying a new website was a big undertaking because it took a lot of wrangling people together, thinking about content, thinking about digital marketing goals. So we created a 10-page guide that helped people understand the planning process for a new website. So when they were ready to buy a new website, we could already help them make that planning process. So we had that downloadable guide. And then I also did a recurring webinar that walked through that guide. So if people wanted to learn and kind of see how to use it, there's a free webinar, they could attend it. Of course, I didn't like harass people if they attended the webinar to come buy from me, but that converted a lot of people because they realized, wait a second, James knows what he's talking about. This was super helpful. When I want to buy a new website, I'm going to reach out to them. That was kind of the thought process behind that. And
I had a quiz that I did similar things with on the digital transformation side, where there was a self-paced quiz that people could take that actually gave them real information about what the next step in their kind of journey should look like. And then we had a webinar series again, where I would talk through the 7 steps and helping people identify where they were in those 7 steps. And again, those 2 pieces went hand in hand. But to James's point, we didn't like hard sell someone the second that they did that. We trusted that the educational content would be enough. And if we were the right fit, they would reach back out. And it ended up being a really great way for us to generate leads as well, with a very different type of sale.
And the thought process again behind lead magnets is that you're doing all this stuff top of funnel to create the content. You have to have some way to convert. And some people will, see your content. Again, here's a really fancy graph I made, which is very scientific. Up the y-axis, you'll see the level of trust from 0 to 100. Across the x-axis, you'll see the amount of content they've consumed, right? So every time they see your educational content, they are building up that trust. And it is possible to create educational content like social posts on a regular basis, have a contact us button, and someone will click it and they're excited to work with you. But where lead magnets come in is like, if you do a really good job, they are going to build that trust up even higher. If you have a really good guide, if you do a really good webinar, that will help build that trust up that you are that expert. So the logical next step is to purchase from you, and that trust is already there. So if you take away lead magnets, you're still doing better off than people who are doing cold DMs and cold pitches and hoping someone buys from them. You are still building trust with educational content. Lead magnets are just a super high value touch point in there. And a question we sometimes get, but can't they just do it themselves? We were talking with someone yesterday. Dan, we were talking with you yesterday about this, right? Like, if you create a really good how-to guide that explains how to do your service, couldn't someone just do it themselves? And yes, they can, and some will, and some are not the right fit for you. They don't have the budget for you. They are do-it-yourself people, but for majority of people, they won't. They will say, "This is super helpful. And now I know how to do it. I still want to hire you and pay you money to do it for me." That's really what happens with lead magnets. So that is also the approach I would think about with lead magnets. Make it so valuable that you solve a problem for them in the process, right? Solve something for them by them consuming your lead magnet so they trust you. And then again, that logical next step is to purchase from you. And then
an example of this that we do, like we have a 5-day LinkedIn activation challenge on our website that anybody can go and download, and it'll give them 5 days of how to get started with videos and information from us on this exact strategy, how to implement it. But what we see is the right people that are doing that get to the end of it and they realize, content is a lot. there's a lot to unpack here. This got me started and I want to keep going, but I need somebody to help hold me accountable. I need somebody to work with ideas on. And so the natural extension is for them to come join us in our community. And they've gotten the value out of the guide. And if they want to, great, keep running. We'll cheer you on, keep creating your content. But sometimes they recognize that they need to come work with us and there's stuff that they need to do beyond that. Our hope is that 5-day LinkedIn activation challenge gets people going with our methodology and gets people started. And if they realize that they need more support, then they'll come work with us. But again, not everybody that takes that is an existing customer of ours. And we just hope that we've helped them along the way.
Yes. So at this point, if we're following along here, you've educated people through online content that you're consistently posting. You provided value through some sort of lead magnet. And the bottom of the funnel, like we talked about earlier, is like you've become that trusted advisor. And they're coming to you directly now to help solve that problem. And this is where you're not a salesperson at this stage. You are someone that they already trust. And again, like Emma mentioned it earlier, but a comment we typically hear is, I feel like I already know you. When you hear that, you pop on a Zoom call. It's especially true with video content, but it can be true for other types of content too. If people pop on that call and they say, I feel like I already know you, or like those happy thoughts, that is what you're looking for, because that means that you've had that trust built up and that trust transfer. And we hear it, our clients hear it. This is a common thing. Emma's laughing, so I'm assuming she has something to share.
I'm just laughing at Dan. It's like being in the Matrix, Dan. You never know if you're in the lead magnet or not.
You might be. I mean, so that being said, LinkedIn Lives are awesome. We're reaching people right now, and this, they'll live on LinkedIn ongoing. So maybe you're seeing this in the future. But we didn't you didn't register for this in the same way you did like a gated webinar, right? So it's kind of like a mini lead magnet, but not the same way. If we're just throwing it in there. But thanks, Dan. So at this stage, what you are focused on is delivering change. So I mentioned earlier the grind, harass, sell cycle of the typical old school sales methodology. In the educate, connect, consult, at the bottom of it, you are helping people deliver change because they're not buying your products. They are buying that vision of a better future. They have a problem. You have a solution. They're trying to reach a happy future where they don't have that problem anymore, right? So their current state is stressing them out. They're frustrated. They have some old habits they need to overcome. They need to go to that future state where they understand that vision of where you can take them. So this is where trust is so important. And I'm hoping there's a couple of people here who are nodding their heads watching this thinking like in their B2B sales cycle that it's all about trust that you can help deliver that change they're trying to make. And so a good salesperson in a B2B setting like this, they are not a salesperson. They are a consultant, a trusted advisor that is truly helping people understand what it means to make that change to reach that end point. So that is what you're looking for there.
James, there's one other comment that came in that I think might be the right time to talk through it. And I think it was Daniel, but like talking about how to align outreach with buyer readiness, especially on like the content side, to make sure that it comes across and like meets people where they are. Yes. And, especially from current state to future state, I thought that this might be a good time for you to kind of talk through the flow of like buyer stages and like how, and I can throw a link in to the content matrix and how we can help people with that as well. But I thought that now might be a good time to kind of talk through like, how do people go from current state to future state and what are those different stages?
Yeah. So definitely want to know what your buyer's journey is in those different stages, right? So a handful of different ways to think about buyer's journeys. The one that I use is problem awareness, top of it. So where they go from not knowing they even have a problem to understanding they have a problem. Then solution research, where they're looking like they know they have a problem, so trying to find the solution to that problem. So looking at different options. Then decision making, where they know what the solution is. They know the product or the service they want to buy, but they're trying to make a decision about which firm to buy that from. So they're picking the firm at that point. And then afterwards is post-purchase, where like after they've bought from you, is the information they're looking for. At each stage of the funnel, there's different things people need. At the problem research or the problem awareness stage, it's more about content talking about the problem itself and the impact it's having on businesses or the potential symptoms they're seeing. Solution research is where you talk about your product or service, not from like a sales and positioning side of things, but more about talking about why your service is the right solution for the problem. Decision making is where you talk about your company as testimonials, your team, your process, the things that helps you sell your business. And then again, post-purchase is more of like ongoing education and support for your product or service. So to answer that question directly, I like to use what's called a content matrix, where I think about my target persona, and then at each stage, I will then brainstorm ideas and content that helps solve that fits in the kind of content based on where they're at in that buyer's journey. And I'll after this presentation, I'll drop a link to a blog post I did on that too. But it's important to address all of it. Most companies only focus on like one or two stages. They only talk about their products or services, or they only talk about their team. Or people who are afraid of selling might only talk at the very top of the funnel. So they're afraid to talk about their products or services, right? So by creating a matrix and doing like a spreadsheet and just straight up saying like, here's the buying stages, here's my persona, and then at each intersection of persona and buying stage, talk about the kind of content you want to create there. That'll help you fill out that entire buyer's journey. So hopefully that was helpful. And again, I'll drop a link after the presentation today, and then we're happy to follow up afterwards too. All right. So one important thing I kind of want to leave you with: you are an expert. People buy your expertise in your product, in your service. And if you were in a B2B sales cycle, what doing this type of content strategy and digital strategy does for you, and implementing this favorite teacher framework, what that does for you is it allows you to leverage your expertise to build trust. That is what the goal here is to create leverage for you so you can reach more people with your expertise and build that trust. That is what we're trying to do with this framework. Again, top of funnels, educate. We're using content to build trust. Middle of funnel, we are capturing leads and building our pipeline by using call to actions that provide value. And then bottom of the funnel, we are acting as a trusted advisor and helping people implement that change they're trying to make. That is the framework that we recommend when it comes to implementing these types of strategies. So how to get started? I would say start with assessing your current state by stuff we talked about today. What are you currently doing? What are you doing well? What are you missing? What do you have issues with? Think about each stage of the funnel and be honest with yourself and thinking about where you're at with things. Once you know that, then create a plan. Think about what you need to start doing, whether it's creating content more consistently, or it's understanding who your buyer is in the first place and creating buyer personas. Maybe you need to create a lead magnet. Or maybe it's bottom of the funnel and you're not doing a good job nurturing your leads because you're not doing a good job of creating that vision and helping implement that why behind your purchase and guiding them through that, right? So those are all the things you can be thinking about and creating a plan to help do them. And then the last step is execute and iterate, right? And you never stop with this stuff. This is not like a one and done thing. And I would say consistency is the number one part of this, is doing it again and again. And as you do that, you'll get feedback about what's working, what's not. I talk about this often with our clients. Sometimes you'll create a lead magnet. It's a home run and you get tons of good conversions. People love it. They find it super valuable. Sometimes you don't. And you just need to keep doing it and keep trying things until you find what works and then double down on those too. So that's kind of the steps to get through it. How we can help if you're looking for help. We have two main avenues. Number one is our Catalyst community. So if you are an individual who's trying to go through this process, maybe you're a small business owner or you're an executive, this is a community we have. Awesome group of people. We do master classes. We have group discussions. We have group coaching calls, as well as a library of educational content, all on these types of topics. I'd say number one reason, though, people join it is just the accountability and having other people who are going through the same process with them. So that's one way we help people. We also have advisory services. So if you're looking for help for your business, our process there starts with an in-depth audit to see where you're currently at in this process using our framework. So we go through the educational favorite teacher framework and do an audit, which provides a roadmap. And then we actually help you implement that through ongoing coaching, advising, and tracking where you're at with things too. So those are the two ways we help. Reach out to me or Emma if you're looking to learn more about either one of those. We're happy to pop on a call and talk through that with you. Now, I know we have 5 minutes left, but we can definitely go over because I think our next thing's at 1 Central Time. So we're here to answer questions. Hopefully, Emma's been curating a bunch for us here too.
Oh,
The
no, I've
last
been
one,
sticking them in as we've been going. So if
good.
anybody that's got questions or things on your mind, throw them into the comments while we've still got some time. I hope nobody else had issues with the live stream. I lost access to it for a couple of minutes. So if you did, the recording will be available after the fact, and it's also on YouTube. So you can get access to that if you did lose connectivity at any point. Sometimes LinkedIn Live gets testy with us. But I do see a lot of comments that Brian's ready for grind replacement therapy. Just start grinding on consistent content instead of, like James said, grinding unwanted on people. And then Lauren did say that she can see our flywheel, everything for the full circle, and that she loves it. But
Yes.
even beyond this time right now, James and I are very good at responding to messages and happy to help however we can. So if you've got questions or comments or ideas that you want to talk through, certainly send us an email or a direct message here on LinkedIn. And we're happy to kind of dive into specifics with you if you've got ideas that you need to talk through.
Yes. And I'm a huge believer in flywheels. I know we have some system people on here, some process nerds. I'm a huge believer in that whole, continuous improvement philosophy. And that is really at the heart of what a good sales strategy should be about, right? You should be having something where you're testing content, you're testing ideas, seeing how you perform, seeing how it affects your pipeline, and iterating and improving from there. So I'm a big believer in that philosophy.
Well, I haven't seen any other questions come in. So rather than James and I staring at all of you without any specifics to talk through, again, feel free to reach out to us at info@rolloffconsulting.com. We've got a contact form on our website, or our DMs are open to talk through all things digital strategy as you need it. But thank you, everybody, so much for joining us for the conversation. And hopefully some of these resources and ideas will spur you to start driving in the direction of creating content that fills your pipeline as opposed to grinding and chasing.
Keep on grinding, everyone. Thank you.
Have a great day.